Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this information session. I think everyone who registered is more or less here now, so we're going to begin. We have about 1 hour together to review some of the details related to the Nutrition Innovation Challenge Fund as you are wrapping up the preparation of your applications. We have a simple agenda today, where we will be going through the application form and the application questions in a little bit more details than last week, so that we can go a little bit deeper. And we will also review the annexes. We're also going to have several moments of Q&A during the meeting, so don't hesitate to ask questions at that time. As per the other meetings, all of the resources related to the Nutrition Innovation Challenge Fund are on the website, the link to which you can see here, and I'm going to put it in the chat box in a second. And we will also upload the recording for this meeting there. So please make sure you're visiting the website for the resources, and especially for the frequently asked question documents. As you know, we are updating the frequently asked questions document regularly. For instance, we've updated it last week after the session, and again earlier this week after receiving additional rounds of questions. So I'm just going to open it for a second here to make sure everyone knows the FAQ document and what's there. Sorry, things are loading. So the alternative way to access the FAQ document is to go to the website that you know well by now and click on read the FAQ here, and it will send you to a document with the summary of the different questions that we've been receiving. And always the date at which we've added information in case you just want to check new Q&A. So as you know, we are left with about a little bit more than a week before the submission of the proposals. And so we will take a moment now to specifically talk about two things that have been coming up in the questions we've received. The first one has been on match funding. So we just wanted to elaborate for a moment about the match funding. If you have additional questions on match funding, while I'm talking, don't hesitate to drop them in the chat box so that we can address them. So the idea behind the match funding is really to understand what resources the applicants are using in addition to the intended funding that they're requesting from the Nutrition Innovation Challenge Fund. The idea is to understand the sustainability of the project beyond this initial pilot investment. And there are no specifications in terms of what the match funding should look like, except that we are asking you please to reflect it in the budget. So there is no particular proportion that we are requesting you to respect when you're identifying match funding. It could be 50-50, it could be 20%, 80%, etc. And we are also allowing in-kind contributions to be reflected as contributions to the project. For instance, if you have an office in Arua and the office is going to serve as the base to implement the project in Rhino, this is acceptable to consider that part of the cost of running that office that are covered by your organization in outside of these innovation pilots are a match funding contribution to this project. Same for staff costs, for instance. In case you are using in-kind contributions for the match funding, we are requesting that you please evaluate the monetary value of that in-kind contribution so that you're able to give it a number in the budget. At this stage, this is for information purposes, and the winning proposals anyway, we will have more detailed discussions with the winning proposals to understand the different lines of the budget, maybe get them a little bit refined, and also agree on whether or not the different things can fit in the budget. At this stage, we ask you to just use your judgment on what is actually contributing to the innovation project to determine what the need is for the from the Nutrition Innovation Fund and what is it that your organization can contribute. I hope this is clear. If there are any more questions on the match funding, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat box. We've also received questions on the contract type, and the ambition for this Nutrition Innovation Challenge Fund is to be operating using performance-based service contracts, which means for those of you who work for NGOs, this will not be a sub-grant agreement, but rather a more supply type contract. And it will be focused on performance, on reaching performance objectives. That is to say, reaching different milestones that will trigger different tranches of payment. In case the service contract is not something you're familiar with, please do reach out to let us know, and we will take this under advisement, but we may not be able to get back to you before the application is due on 23rd January. Thank you. Thank you, Nisreen. I can see you have a question on match funding in the chat box. Is the match funding only for lead applicant or for the co-applicants as well? This is up to the consortium, the partners, to decide who is providing match funding. And at this stage, the budget is not disaggregated by partner. So you can decide you can decide where the match funding is coming from. And you will see in the narrative, in the budget, there is a section for a narrative explanation of the budget line. So if you wish to specify from which partner the match funding contribution comes, you may do so there. And maybe it will become a bit clearer now as we look at the budget template in a little bit. Because before we look at the annex templates, I wanted to take a moment to have to go through the application form. Thank you, Maike. I see another questions on the match funding. The question of accountability, I thought we already answered by email that the way reporting will be done on the budget will be discussed with the winning agreements, with the winning proposals. So at this stage, we're not, there is no clarity on this point. Sorry about that. So now I'm going to proceed with the application form, and if there are more questions, then I'll get back to them in a moment. Sorry, one sec as things are loading. All right, so last time we had a look at the application form already, just showing you a little bit the process of how to fill it out. But this time I just wanted to demonstrate how, to take a moment to look at each question. So the very first thing to do when you're filling in your application, and we recommend that you've prepared all of this data offline first in the template that has been shared with you, Word version of the template, which may allow you to do the process more smoothly when you're ready to submit. So of course, the very first step is to put in an email address, and then we've put a checklist to help you verify that you have prepared all the annexes that are relevant to your proposal. Of course, some annexes do not apply to your specific proposal. For instance, if you're applying as an individual, you will not attach a proof of registration. So the first section of this proposal, as you can see, there are no points attributed. This section is really to get an overview of who, what, where, you know, like basic info on your proposal, frame it in the context. So we are asking you first for the name of the innovation project, and please be mindful for every question of the character limit. The character limit is including spaces. If you go beyond this character limit, you will see an error message, and the form will not be possible to submit. Just like if I demonstrate this now, by putting in something a bit longer in this section, you can see answer is too long. The second question is, which challenge statement will your innovation address? You can select multiple answers here, but this also is not mandatory. There are not more points if you select several challenges. It's just to understand which challenge you're focusing on. The next part of this application form is to understand who the partners are that are applying that are combining their expertise for this application. So it starts by asking a couple of questions about the lead applicant, with the contact person, the email address, the phone number, and also how would you describe your organization in terms of type of organization and registration status. And then the same information is asked for co-applicant 1, 2, and 3. In case you have more than 3 co-applicants, then you can provide that information in the very last question here. This section is really focusing on the innovation project idea. So now we're asking you to tell us actually what you plan to do to respond to the challenge you selected in the first section. So this section will be scored out of 30 points, and it starts with explaining the concrete challenges. So what we're looking for here is not just a simple repetition of the challenge statement that you've selected in the first section of the application. Here, we would like to hear a little bit of concrete details about the challenge and the obstacles. So please avoid very generic statements like, you know, poverty leads families to be unable to provide the right types of food to their children. We want things to be a little bit specific, please. When you're preparing this section, we highly recommend that you read the desk review that we've made available. It has a lot of very useful background information that should help you frame this part. The next question is directly connected to how your innovation solves that challenge. So you've described first what the challenge is, and now the idea is to get a high-level summary on what you're going to do with this innovation proposal. You need to explain, you know, thanks to your innovation, what is the change you're going to see in the community? How is it going to be transformed compared to what is already happening? So this is where you're formulating a vision, a solution, and it needs to be concrete and also need to relate clearly to the challenge you're solving. The reviewer needs to feel convinced that your answer is really a response to the challenge and not a generic innovation that answers a generic innovation solution that has no connection to one of the challenge areas. The next question is for you to provide a little bit more detail on the solution. So here you can see the limit is 800 characters. So we want a snappy summary. It needs to, in this short section, it needs to be obvious to the reviewer what it is that you're trying to do. So think about how you would describe this in a few minutes. You know, the classical elevator pitch approach. You're stuck in an elevator with someone, this person is a donor, and you have 3 minutes to tell them what your solution is about. This is what we're looking for in this question. Whereas the next one is for you to elaborate a little bit more in case you feel like the elevator pitch has left out critical information on what you're trying to do. So, you know, explaining specifically additional information on this project. Next comes a question that will allow reviewers to understand how unique, how innovative your solution actually is, because not all solutions are innovative. So you have identified a challenge, you're proposing a solution. However, there is already a lot of work going on in the refugee response in Uganda that looks to improve malnutrition. And we are really focused with this Nutrition Innovation Fund on finding things that are different, that have not been done for refugees, and not just replicating existing initiatives, in the sense that if you are proposing distributing complementary foods to reduce malnutrition among young children, this resembles a lot to all the ongoing humanitarian nutrition programs that are happening, and it's not meeting it's not innovative enough. In a way, the innovation can also be different from what already exists, because it is less costly than what is already been happening. It is more sustainable. It is less dependent on aid funding. So it doesn't mean that we're going to only fund radically different products or never heard of digital tools. On the contrary, we want to be told that there is an evidence base showing this innovation is a good idea. But this new solution needs to be transforming a little bit the situation in terms of differentiating itself from business as usual in the nutrition response. And then the next question is really explaining the vision for your innovation. So in this question for your elevator pitch, how your innovation intends to solve the challenge, you will have already touched on the vision. And here we're asking you to elaborate a little bit by explaining the direct outcomes and the long-term changes that you think can happen thanks to your innovation. And this question specifically, it will be read together with the annex on the log frame, the impact hypothesis. So please also just ensure that it's coherent what you put in the log frame and what you write here. Next section focuses on implementation in a very operational sense. So first of all, we want to know in which area you're going to be implementing. It may be just one, it may be both. Remember that proposing to implement in both locations doesn't mean that your project will have higher chances to succeed. However, we are intending to fund projects in both locations. So if you're going for a total budget that is the total amount of funding available, you need to be covering both locations. Then you can put the duration of the project. We also don't give points for shorter, longer project. This is just an information item, and it just helps the reviewers contextualize how feasible your project plan is compared to the time you're proposing. So the project will start in 2022, and you need to propose a duration that is between 6 and 12 months, even if it extends into 2023. We can look into this when the winning innovations are selected. The next question is about human-centered design. As you've seen from the full call guidelines, the human-centered design is one of the important principles for this innovation call, because we have a lot of interest in ensuring that partners that will be benefiting from these innovations, people that will be using it, are consulted and that their needs are understood and taken into consideration to better the solution at hand. The next question is to understand a little bit the learning potential from your project. So we want to understand a little bit your monitoring and evaluation approach. Which kind of info will you get from the project? How will you use it, etc. And finally, we have a question on the risks that you anticipate for the implementation of the pilot and what mitigation approach you will put in place. Please think, of course, of the restrictions that COVID-19 may the pandemic of COVID-19 may impose on the projects, and if those, if there are restrictions on gathering people, on movement, etc., what do you think you will be doing to ensure the project goes ahead? The last question is not mandatory, and it also has no point attributed to it. It's about the type of support that the LINS team could give you during the implementation. So as you've seen in the call guidelines, the LINS team is committed to help you connect with the Save the Children team on the ground, who is already implementing a nutrition portfolio in both locations, in helping you connect with additional partners, resources, etc. So if you have already an idea of the kind of support you will need, do let us know already, but this will not give you points particularly. And then section 4 is about the understanding the feasibility of your proposal based on the capacity of your team and the prior experiences. So in terms of prior experiences, this is the question where we want to know a little bit the evidence base you have for bringing about this solution. What is the data? What is the past experience you've had with this innovation or others have had with this innovation that mean that you're confident, you're comfortable bringing it to one of the pilot locations? This is because we want to avoid exposing refugees to untested innovations, which would be unethical. And this question will be read together with the annex that has, you can add an annex with this evidence supporting document if you like. Then we're asking you to fill the capability statement track record section to understand the technical expertise of individual team members or past projects, in case this is an organization that applies, not an individual applicant. And this will also be read together with annexes that are CVs or sample of the past portfolio. Next, we are also just asking the lead applicant to elaborate in a very short answer why they are well placed to be the lead applicant. Section 5 is monetary. It looks at the budget as a first question. So here we are asking you to specify the total budget. Please do share in dollars. And then also, if possible, explain the match funding and the request from the innovation fund that make up this total budget for your innovation. Okay, I see there is a question on including references in the proof of concept. How do you include references in the proof of concept? So that was the past section on the proof of concept. Richard, would you mind elaborating, please? Maybe you can unmute and tell us what you mean with references, if you mean quoting sources, or if you mean people who can give a reference of the good work done by an organization. Can you unmute and let us know?
I'm referring to quoting sources in case, because if you have a team that has previously done some work that you're working on, then you might need to quote the reference source.
Absolutely. So maybe since the narrative section is not very long, you can simply put in parentheses maybe the source, like you know, name and year. And then in the annex, you may want to have a Word document with the full bibliography that you've been referencing and links to the sources maybe. So something of the sort could be working. Does that address the question?
Positive.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'll just continue on the budget. So this question here on the budget amount, this doesn't attract any points. We're not giving more points to a low budget or a high budget, but the budget will be reviewed as the annex in terms of understanding how judicious the resources are proposed to be used for this project. And then there are two questions on the sustainability and the business model. So first, we are asking, what opportunities for scaling and long-term sustainability do you see? And here it's a short answer where we're asking you to tell us about the plans, the ambitions beyond this innovation pilot phase, and how you're already having those in mind as you're getting ready to start this project, so that you really have a long-term perspective and you're not here just to spend the money from the Nutrition Innovation Challenge Fund and then move on to a next project. We're really looking for sustainable projects with potential for sustainability. And lastly, there is a question on business model. As you know, this call has a strong emphasis on collaborating with private sector, on developing ways for the project to be sustainable using sources that are not relying on aid funding. So please also take a look at this and explain if you are going to find revenue streams, who will your customers be? So do you envision that your innovation will be paid for by individual refugees buying it, or by businesses, by other NGOs who purchase a service to maintain this innovation going, etc. Please really note that there is a strong focus for this Nutrition Innovation Challenge Fund in collaborating with private sector and establishing those relationships that can contribute to long-term sustainability rather than depending on initiatives funded by institutional donors. So those who can make a convincing case around this will be making more points on this question. I see another question on the capability statement and track record. Yes, please. Let me go to the annex and we can have a look at this. Yes, also individuals need to provide track record. So as we're moving on to the last section of this application form, and the last one is very light. Here, this is the uploading of the annexes. And finally, at the end, we ask you to confirm that you're authorized to present this innovation. It's not infringing on any property rights outside of your organization. And also just to let us know how you heard about the fund and if you used some of the resources we shared for the fund. And this will attract no points, obviously. It's just for our internal purposes of understanding what was useful and what was less useful. And once you've submitted, you will see this message telling you your application has been received, and you're also given an opportunity to edit in case you realize you made a mistake. All right, I see also a question on where we upload the bibliography. So let's move on to the annexes. So there are 5 annexes that are mandatory and 2 optional ones. The first annex that is mandatory is the Annex A, and it's a template we've provided you with. You need to upload a budget, implementation plan, and impact hypothesis for the project. Please note this is not one per partner. It's one that brings together the inputs from all partners and gives a comprehensive overview of the project. Secondly, we're asking for the proof of registration, but this only applies for organizations like NGOs or companies, not individual applicants. And in case you're applying in a partnership, we're only asking the lead applicant to upload the registration document. Then we have the proof of experience. So here, this is where we are getting information. And if you're applying as individuals, you may upload the CVs of the top 3 team members. If you're applying as an organization, it might not be the team members. It might be instead a capability statement of a couple of pages, maximum 5, that shows some examples of past projects you've implemented that are relevant for this fund. You may also decide to do a mix, like put the CV of the team leader together with an overview of 2 projects, for instance. This is a little bit flexible, but please make sure you combine everything into one document of maximum 5 pages. So I think this should be answering the questions in the chat box on whether or not an individual needs to fill the capability statement, and that we're attaching the CVs of the top 3 team members. In case these questions have not been answered, please do let me know now. Then the next annex is a form with critical information on the leadership team. And this is a very basic, simple form that we need for legal vetting purposes. Please do make sure you are also filling it. And finally, in case you're applying as a partnership between several organizations, please attach a letter that proves that all partners are on board with this joint application. So what we want to avoid is a lead applicant saying they are partnering with some organizations without having actually received consent from some of the organizations. This can be a very simple letter signed by management from all sides. Then there are the optional supporting documents, the proof of concept, and the business canvas or business model. So the proof of concept, this is where you're attaching additional information that relates to the question we looked at before. So let me go back. In this section 4, experience capacity, question here, the first question here, what proof of concept do you have? Here you're providing a narrative summary of your proof of concept, and you have the option to also attach an annex with additional information. So this is where you could have the bibliography or an article or some pictures of past experiences, etc. We are also okay, like we can read a PDF document for this, or look at a PowerPoint, or if you want instead to upload a short video, that's also okay. But please be a little bit mindful of the length, because we will not be able to go beyond about 10 minutes of content or about 5 pages. And then there is also the option to attach additional information on the business model. So in relation to the budget question, which had in section 5, there is a question on the business model. So here it's a short narrative description. And if you like, you can also attach an additional document that provides more details on your business model. This is not mandatory, but in case you do, this will be read together with this section on your business model. Let me go to the chat and see if we have more questions. In case of consortium, how is the proof of experience presented? So here it's up to the partners to decide, but I would recommend that you highlight some of the relevant projects from each of the partners. So it's giving a holistic understanding of who the partners are and why they are complementary to each other. Does this answer the question? If not, let me know, Nisreen. And then we have a question from Brian. Say your innovation has multiple parts and one of the parts has not yet been tested, but has been tested by other reputable firms and company and has demonstrated success. This is completely fine. If the innovation has been tested by others, it's acceptable as a proof of concept. It's acceptable as evidence-based. It does not affect you from your chances of acquiring the funding. The only thing that is important to have in mind is, if this has been tested by others, do you have the rights, the intellectual property rights to use this solution? You need to be sure that this is the case. I see a hand up from Afima. We don't have the name. So the person from Afima, if you want to ask your question, that's okay. We can take it now.
Good afternoon, colleagues. This is Dale and Joan here. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is, there is that part whereby you're supposed to put the CVs of the top 3 and the capability statement, and it's only 5 pages. So how do you go about that? Do you focus on summarizing the past projects and leave out the CVs, because the space is only 5 pages and some CVs may be very long, but if you'd like to have all the 3 CVs, it may be a bit longer.
Yeah, so this is up to you. You can decide what presents the best overview of your application. Is it by giving CVs, or is it by giving summaries of projects, or is it by putting a mix of both? So for instance, I would say you can put a CV or 2, but you keep them to 1 page each with top elements of the CV, not like a 6-page version of the CV. Just think about, when you're trying to summarize the CV, what is it that the reviewer really needs to know about this person to be convinced that this person is well placed to execute this project. So for instance, I don't need to know where this person went to high school. I just need to know the degree they have and how many years of experience they have in nutrition, for instance, in which companies. So it, like maybe like a light version of a CV. So that could be like 2 team members, 2 pages, and then you still have 3 pages to provide overviews of past projects, for instance. As you can see, there are many applications coming up. So we are recommending this limit on pages so that we are making sure we can actually read everything that comes in. Yeah. Does this help?
Yes, thank you, and over. Thank you.
Great, thanks. If there are more questions, we can take them now. Otherwise, I will go through the Annex templates for a moment. Okay, I'll go through the Annex templates for a moment, and you can continue putting questions in the chat box or raising your hand in case there is anything coming to mind. So the first annex to look at is Annex A, which is really the mandatory annex for your proposal. We need only one of this annex, and it needs to capture the data from all partners, but it's not disaggregating it by partner at this stage. This is something we may be asking the winning applicants to do at a later stage. So do take a look at the instructions on the first tab before you start filling it out. Especially it has a description of what we mean by the different budget sections. And then there is a tab on budget. And here you can add more lines if you have more information to enter, but do not add more columns, please. So for instance, you will start with a staff line, and you will need a coordinator for the project. The person will be paid monthly. They will be on the payroll, and they will be working for 9 months. Let's put a salary here, and then the formula will automatically calculate the amount here. Then you get to column F and G, and you can just put a disaggregation between what is being asked from the Nutrition Innovation Fund versus what you're bringing as match funding. Let's say you have already this staff on your payroll doing nutrition projects, and they will split their time 50-50 between the two projects. Then you should explain this and split the amount between the two columns. And then here you explain this, this person already on payroll will 50% work on the innovation pilot, etc., to ensure community mobilization. So it's important, please, that you put some narrative information in that column so that we understand a little bit what this is all about. For staffing lines, it's often self-explanatory based on the title, but not always. The same goes for all the different lines in the budget, of course. Let me see, there is a question here. No. Okay, good. Not on the. So are there any questions on the budget format and how to go about this? All right, I'll go to the next. Next is the implement. Yeah, I can hear.
A question. If we are saying that, I know that we are giving like one complete comprehensive budget for the entire project without breakdown of the activities for each of the partners. But in regards of cost, let's say that we are implementing an awareness raising campaign. Do we give like a breakdown of the activities under this campaign, or can we just say like provide the lump sum of the cost?
We can have lump sums in the budget, but let's be mindful about how much of the budget is a lump sum. Like you see, like 80% of your budget cannot be lump sums, for instance. So for instance, in program implementation costs, I'm assuming in your awareness raising campaign, there is maybe there is travel, maybe there is airtime. So it's quite easy to break these lines a little bit into line items. And then you can have also printing of materials for the awareness campaign. But if you are releasing activities that are better as a standalone, you can also put them as a lump sum and maybe put in the narrative a little bit what will be done under this awareness campaign. This will last 3 weeks, you know, 5 sessions a week, something like that.
Okay, great.
And we may get back to you for more details at a later stage.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So if we are looking a little bit at the implementation plan, this is fairly simple. It's just to get an idea of the spread of activities in time, and it helps understand a little bit how realistic it is and how much you've thought about the actual rollout of the innovation in the field. This is not fixed. You know, once we get to signing contracts, we will have discussions to be able to adjust, revise, but it's to understand a little bit here the list of activities. For instance, awareness raising campaign fits perfectly well here. And you know, then you can put, we'll have one during month 4, one during month 6, one during month 8. And you can specify which partner is doing this. At the bottom, we also have a section specifically for project management in case you want to provide details on this. Maybe, you know, your meal activities, for instance. Yeah. And then we go to tab 3, which is the log frame and impact hypothesis. So we're asking you to fill those boxes, the red ones, so that by reading this section, we are seeing your vision become very well articulated, just like it is in one of the questions in the narrative template, which says, what is your vision for this innovation? So please make sure your answer to this question relates to this annex. And at the bottom, you have the log frame. And here we're asking you to fill the parts where it says fill here, not the ones where it's grayed out. Oops, sorry. This should be grayed out. Sorry about that. We will, we can resend the template if you like. If you have any specific assumptions or mitigation measures that you're going to be taking in relation to specific activities, please do put them in those columns. And here I'm just going to show you an example on the impact hypothesis. It doesn't need to be long, but the objective is to understand with these inputs, those are the results we will see, which means there will be change in the community. Those are the long-term or mid-term outcomes. And this is why we have this vision. So if my vision is that a new, more affordable porridge recipe can be commercialized to low-income households in Chaka to transform dietary practices for children, I am expecting that my inputs are a new affordable porridge recipe, a new tool for marketing porridge, which will lead to people in Chaka becoming more aware of healthy and affordable options. They will thus be putting more, they will just be using more porridge in the diets of their children. And this means that in terms of outcomes, there will be better access to nutrients for children and the rest of the family. And also, as a secondary but important outcome, the porridge makers will get additional incomes, which means in turn they are able to provide better for their families on all aspects. So this concludes the review of the annexes. Are there any questions, please?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello, can I go ahead?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Samson from Hill Mushrooms. And I heard you saying that that once you submit, you can still edit your proposal. So I wanted to know whether even after the date, like I don't know, after the date, the sub due date, can we still edit the proposals, or it's not possible?
No, you cannot edit after the final date. So if you're submitting your proposal today and you realize you need to make changes, then you will be able to edit it between now and the 23rd of January. We will not accept edits after the 23rd of January.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? All right, looks like this time we will be able to finish on schedule. So as you know, the deadline is coming up on the 23rd. We may be able to update the FAQ a little bit longer than the 15th of Jan, but please note that questions you will be sending after the 15th of Jan to the linz@responseinnovationlab.com email, we cannot guarantee that we will be able to answer all of them. So do send the questions early, and next week, please focus on completing the application. We cannot guarantee that we'll be able to answer questions next week, especially not in the final few days leading to the deadline. And then we will look forward to reading your proposals and the shortlisting process, which will also include external evaluators. In case you're aware of people who would like to be part of the evaluation committee and who are not directly involved with your application, of course, do let us know. Don't hesitate. We are happy to hear that. Okay, I see a few more questions in the chat. Let's take those. Yeah, we'll share the recording like usual. It will be on the website. So I'll just put the link to the website in the chat box before I close the meeting, and we will be uploading the recording today, so you can go back to it in your own time. Thank you everyone for connecting today, and we really wish you good luck with the preparation of the applications, and we're so excited to see them very soon. Yeah, looking forward. Thank you. Bye-bye.